just 13 years old, one girl stood up to the entire Roman Empire. For her defiance, she was handed a sentence that was as symbolic as it was cruel. 13 horrific tortures, one for each year of her life. This is the story of Eulalia, the girl who refused to be silenced. Our story kicks off at the turn of the 4th century. The Roman Empire was in turmoil. It was ruled by Emperor Diocletian, a brilliant military man who was obsessed with control. He saw the empire's growing diversity as a threat and wanted to bring back the old Roman traditions and the old gods. But there was a new faith spreading like wildfire that he couldn't stamp out: Christianity. For years, Christianity had been growing in the shadows. It started with the poor and the outcast, but was now reaching every corner of Roman society. Christians had one big problem in the eyes of the state. They refused to worship the Roman gods or the emperor. This wasn't just a religious disagreement, it was seen as political treason. To Diocletian, this was a threat that had to be eliminated. In 303 AD, he unleashed the Great Persecution, the most brutal and organized campaign to wipe Christianity off the map. The edict was simple: tear down churches, burn scriptures, and every single citizen had to make a sacrifice to the Roman gods, or else. It was a reign of terror. One of the men tasked with enforcing this was a governor named Dian. He arrived in the Roman colony of Barcelona, modern-day Barcelona, with a single chilling mission: crush the Christian faith. It was here that the path of a powerful Roman governor would cross with a young girl, setting the stage for a confrontation that would become the stuff of legend. Around the year 290 AD, a girl named Eulalia was born into a noble Christian family living just outside Barcelona. From her earliest years, everyone could see she was different. The poet Prudentius, who later wrote about her life, said she had a wisdom far beyond her years and had no time for childish games or luxuries. Her name, Eulalia, is Greek for well-spoken, a name that would turn out to be incredibly fitting. She wasn't quiet about her faith. It was a fire inside her. She saw the world in black and white: God's truth versus pagan lies. As news of Diocletian's persecution reached her family, they grew terrified. They saw their daughter's fiery spirit and knew it could get her killed. So they did what any loving parents would do. They tried to protect her. They moved her deeper into the countryside, to the village of Saria, hoping to hide her from the horrors in the city. They begged her to just be quiet, to hide her faith until the danger passed. But to Eulalia, hiding was the same as giving in. How could they stand by while fellow Christians were being hunted down? The urge to do something, to bear witness, was too strong. She believed she was destined for something more. So one night, the 13-year-old girl slipped away from home, her mind set on one terrifying goal: confronting Governor Dian himself. Eulalia arrived in Barcelona and marched straight to the Praetorium, the Roman seat of power. There, she stood before Governor Dian, a man who held the power of life and death in his hands. You have to imagine the scene. This powerful official, surrounded by his guards, being called out by a small, determined girl. According to the accounts, Dian was more amused than angry at first. He tried to reason with her, offering her gifts and promising a bright future if she would just do one simple thing: touch a bit of salt and incense to the offering cake for the gods. A tiny gesture to acknowledge Rome's authority. But Eulalia didn't budge. She looked the governor in the eye and denounced the Roman gods as nothing more than man-made idols. she condemned the persecution and declared her faith in the one true God. Then, in a final, shocking act of defiance, she reportedly kicked over the pagan idols and stamped on the offering cake. That's when Dian's amusement turned to cold, hard fury. This wasn't a misguided child anymore. This was a public challenge to his power and the emperor's. He realized that if this girl would not bend, she would have to be broken. He ordered his guards to seize her. He would make an example of her, a spectacle of pain so awful it would terrify any other Christian who thought about defying Rome. The punishment, as legend tells it, would be as symbolic as it was sadistic. For her 13 years of life, Eulalia would suffer 13 tortures. What follows is one of the most brutal martyrdom stories in Christian history. It's important to remember that these accounts come to us from hagiography, writings about the lives of saints, and were meant to inspire faith. The specific list of tortures is part of a powerful legend, a symbolic story of endurance rather than a verified historical record. The torment began. According to the legend, she was first stripped and brutally whipped. But she didn't cry for mercy. Next, the torturers brought out iron hooks and began tearing at her skin. The pain would have been unimaginable. Yet, Eulalia is said to have remained silent, her eyes fixed toward the heavens. The cruelty kept escalating. Her open wounds were rubbed with rough stones. She was forced to walk across burning embers. They pressed lit torches against her body. In one horrific act, they reportedly cut off her breasts and then poured boiling oil over her wounds. One of the most famous tortures from her legend involves a barrel. The soldiers supposedly took a large wooden barrel, filled it with knives and broken glass, put Eulalia inside, and rolled it down a steep street 13 times. To this day, that street in Barcelona is known as the Baixada de Santa Eulalia, Saint Eulalia's descent, a permanent mark on the city's map that commemorates her story. Throughout this ordeal, the core conflict never changed. The brute force of an empire against the spiritual conviction of a teenage girl. With every torment she survived, Dian's frustration grew, and Eulalia's legend was born. She was no longer just a girl. She was becoming a symbol of a spirit that could triumph even as the body was being destroyed. After the tortures failed to break her, Dian ordered Eulalia to be paraded naked through the streets, a final attempt to humiliate her. But here, tradition says the first miracle occurred. A sudden, unseasonable snow began to fall, blanketing her body and preserving her modesty from the gawking crowd. For the onlookers, it was a clear sign of divine protection. Her broken body was finally taken to be executed. For the final, 13th act of cruelty, Dian ordered her to be crucified on an X-shaped cross, also known as a saltire. This cross, different from the traditional one, would become her most lasting symbol. As she hung on the cross, her life fading, a second miracle is said to have happened. At the moment of her death, witnesses claimed to see a white dove fly from her mouth. For the Christians watching, the meaning was unmistakable. It was her pure soul, finally free, ascending to heaven. The Roman soldiers, terrified by the snow and the dove, reportedly fled the scene. A group of brave Christians later came and took down her body, giving her a proper burial. Though her life was cut short, her death wasn't an end. It was the beginning of a legacy that would outlive the governor who condemned her and the very empire he served. The story of Eulalia spread like wildfire. Her youth, her courage, and the sheer horror of her suffering made her a powerful symbol of faith during the persecutions she was quickly revered as a saint in the early Christian church. Her legacy became woven into the very fabric of Barcelona. Her relics were hidden during the Moorish invasion, but rediscovered in 878. Today, they are enshrined in a beautiful alabaster sarcophagus in the crypt of the Cathedral of Barcelona, which is officially named the Cathedral of the Holy Cross and Saint Eulalia in her honor. And in a tradition that connects directly to her story, the cathedral's cloister is home to 13 white geese, one for each year of her life and each torture she endured. Eulalia is the patron saint of Barcelona and of sailors. Every year on February 12th, the city celebrates her with a festival, keeping her memory alive. Now, there is a historical debate here. Some scholars wonder if Eulalia of Barcelona is the same person as another young martyr, Eulalia of Mérida, who died in a strikingly similar way around the same time. We may never know if it was two different girls or one powerful story that became localized in two cities. But regardless, the figure of Eulalia, the brave, well-spoken girl who gave her life for what she believed in, remains a powerful cultural icon. So, what does the story of Saint Eulalia really tell us? It's a raw look at the nature of power. The Roman Empire had all the worldly power. It could conquer, it could legislate, it could kill. But it couldn't force a 13-year-old girl to abandon her conscience. In the showdown between Dacian and Eulalia, we see two kinds of strength collide: the power to inflict pain and the power to endure it for something bigger than yourself. Her story lasts because it reminds us that true courage isn't about being fearless. It's about acting in spite of your fear. It shows that conviction can be a force more resilient than steel. The 13 tortures were meant to erase her, to make her an example of how pointless it is to resist. Instead, they made her immortal, transforming a young girl into a global symbol of defiance whose story still inspires people over 1,700 years later.